This question is from Brian. How do I help my clients with extensive shame?
So shame, as you well know, we consider both primary and secondary. Shame is also humans' perfectly reasonable, understandable defense. Shame is an inhibitor. Shame is a relational inhibitor. Shame shuts us down and shuts us out when further relationship contact feels dangerous or threatening. The original neurological underpinnings of shame were meant to be adaptive. That we would hold ourselves back from further relationship exposure, which would often lead to rejection. And so we induce our self-blame, our blame of self, as a way to inhibit the break of shame. We provoke our own blame, our own criticism of ourselves to evoke our shame, which inhibits us and kind of keeps us small and in our place in order to prevent further relationship exposure and rejection, potential rejection and humiliation.
You're saying that all people do this, that this is part of being a human being, is that, for example, if I make a mistake, my brain will invoke shame as a way to not put myself in that vulnerable position again, where I make that same mistake and then get rejected.
Right. Get chastised, get rejected, get humiliated, any version of that. Relational rejection exposure. That's what shame primarily functions to do before it got a bad rap, before it became so clinically compelling because it's so hard to work with.
Yeah.
As Brian's question highlights, it's a game changer in therapy. It's a dead end. It often feels like it's a showstopper. There's no greater priority than helping a client continue to befriend their inner world, even when shame comes alive. The action tendency for shame is to hide. And so helping a client stay with their sensations and stay with their affect. Shame is a soup of emotion. There's always something primary. We want to validate it as a defense because it makes perfect sense to suppress yourself, to appease the other when you risk exposure, humiliation, and rejection. It makes perfect sense to be appeasing. But then we come back into relationship with our shame, and the clinician learns to hold the shame with the client.
When you say hold shame with client or wedge yourself between the client and their shame, what does that look like in real time?
I want to feel like I'm in limbic resonance with the client in their shame. I want to make the shame. I want to get the texture of the shame. I want to get the image of the shame. I want to get the affect of the shame to make it real enough that I feel like I'm holding a bit of it in my hand. We go closer to it. We make it relational. I want the contagion effect to kick in. So that's what I mean by hold it. And it's a metaphor. It's an analogy of what we're doing with not all shame, all client affect.
It's such a tricky place because when a client has shame, they sort of disappear. It's hard to find them and they don't want you close.
I would love for all of us to say that to our client. Oh, I just feel like I lost you. It's a tricky moment right here, right now. I'm trying to come close and I don't know if this is fair. You're backing up, understandably so. Help me know what you're aware of on the inside. What cleanses, what tightens up, what sensations does your body have?
I am feeling this burning. I just want to be alone. There's nothing that anybody can say. I'm terrible.
Even right now, maybe you don't want me to be talking with you about it. I heard the word terrible. I see your hand over your face, burning, alone, and on the inside right now, burning, alone, feeling terrible. I see you swallowing hard. What's happening on the inside as we just stay with this experience of yours? It's so hard to stay with. You're doing so well.
I feel worthless. I feel hopeless.
Wow, hard feelings to feel. Worthless, hopeless, and head drops. The weight of worthless and hopeless. A good image for worthless and hopeless, Jen?
It's like I'm almost underwater. Like I can barely just put my head and just can't even breathe.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Almost underwater. That just put water in my eyes.
Oh.
That is scary. That is survival. Can barely breathe. Mouth right on the edge of the water line. And what emotion comes alive inside of you? I just said scary, just quite naturally. Does that fit for you? Do you feel scared?
I feel scared and I feel sad.
Scared and sad. Okay.
Yeah.
And on the inside, when you hear yourself say, I feel scared and sad, what do you notice?
I feel relief a little bit.
Ding,
I
ding, ding. That's how primary emotion works. That's what it does for us.
totally right.
And we did not rehearse this, and I'm not paying you to say you feel relief, but that's exactly what happens.
It's really interesting, Catherine. So just in terms of working with shame, it's just this sensation of wanting to hide. But then I felt your empathy. And when you said, what's an image? It sort of took me out of the stuckness of it.
Yeah, good.
And it made me have like an almost working distance from it, feeling
Good.
and working, right?
Yeah.
Then the empathy and the care was really clear. And suddenly I was like, oh, I had a we.
We had a we. I wasn't alone with my overwhelming shame anymore.
Yeah, that was super great. Thank you. That was lovely.
We had a we. And
Mhm.
that's the essence for Brian's question is he wants to remain a we with his client. And can we please talk with our clients when we feel like a we and when we don't feel like a we?
Yeah.
And when my empathy resonates with you, client, and my caring resonates, and when you can't afford to let it in or it's not resonating, could we please talk process?
Yeah.
Because what we just did, Jen, is break that mini version of your isolation, your emotional isolation, which is when the human needs shame to defend against the pain and of the isolation, which is a version of rejection.
Yeah. I'm just taking in everything you're saying. And I guess my mind is also going, oh, and with trauma, it almost becomes, it's preemptive. It's almost like there was a moment, probably we might guess, of profound isolation.
Remember your addition to Peter Levine's definition of trauma, how Jen added, for those of you who don't know this about Jen, she added, how alone did you feel?
When someone is talking about a traumatic experience or a painful experience in childhood, because alone will tell you about the recovery. Alone will tell you about how indelible it was.
Yeah, and that's great, Jen. Alone will tell you about the recovery. Alone will tell you about how indelible it is. And what I was going to say, how alone the client felt or you or me felt tells me how rigid my nervous system needs to get in order to cope with the alone factor. And the more rigid, the more indelible.
The more rigid, the more indelible.
Mm-hmm.
For more hot tips on emotionally focused therapy, go to theeftcafe.com and sign up for our newsletter where you will receive short little clips like the one you just watched.